Hi guys. Okay. Oh, look at my, it's just a floating head. Anyway, I'm kind of really excited for this because hopefully by now I would have linked at the end of the other video to this video. And I talk about what it feels like. Um, that's going to bother me. What it feels like when I'm doing a psychic reading for somebody. And then I touch a little bit about the fact that in the middle of January, I heard something in the background, like playing randomly, um, on something that piqued my interest about the CIA remote viewing program, which literally started this wormhole of me reading all this paperwork and like being shocked that what they're describing people to do is the same thing that I do, even though no one ever taught me. And I'm like, whoa, remote viewing is actually a thing because who knows? I mean, whoever knows. And whoa, they have actual paperwork on this. And also made me question, like, am I just remote viewing something, everything? But then I'm like, I can't, because how could you remote view like people that aren't living? And anyway, that's why I don't concentrate on labels. But let me just, if you haven't watched that video, I'll link it somewhere in the beginning of this video. So you see what I say about how it feels and then see why I would be like so interested suddenly in that our government apparently actually did. Cause like who even knows what you believe? Like I've heard conspiracy theories and yeah, the government can put out anything on their website. Who knows why? Like I don't try and think about like, there's just a big, we have a history of maybe not being able to believe our government in this country, like not gonna lie. So I just didn't even worry about it. But then I was like, whoa. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I could maybe remote view because okay, you always think that something that you don't do is like probably super, super hard to do. Like, I'm not gonna name any names, but because I don't know how many members of my family like actually talk about their stuff, but like in my family, there's a lot of people with like gifts, but they're not the same gifts. Like I have an aunt that sees ghosts. Holla. Um, like physically like sees ghosts, like not during a interaction or reading. I have somebody that sees energy. I have someone that sees orbs. And then I have an Aquarius aunt that just knows things. Isn't that so Aquarius of her? She just knows things. It's yeah, we got stuff in our family, okay? But you always think that something that you don't do is like gonna be super, super hard to do. But remote viewing is not hard, you guys. I'm gonna show you a picture. I spent like 30 seconds at it. It was so easy. So I'm like, I tried to think for a little bit like how I could use this, but I don't know. I'm just like really not, you have to be passionate about what you do. And I'm not really passionate about remote viewing. Maybe I will be passionate about it. Like if I can figure out like how to remote view the lottery balls or something, like, yeah. But I don't, the only way to confirm that is to spend money on a lottery ticket, kind of, because you'd hate to like know the numbers and then not have played. So that seems like a lot of work. Maybe when I'm not doing anything else, like I'll do that. But okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you anyway before I get down on this long wormhole of a tangent. Now, I read all this paperwork um, off of the website. Like I went in depth. You guys don't have to go that in depth. Um, so first of all, I'm just going to show you like what I recommend to people when they want to read like I do. Like I recommend a comfortable space. um I recommend that it's easier, as I've told you in other videos, like if you don't know any information, because then you're forced to kind of rely on what you see. Um, I've said in my videos, if you've watched them to this point, that you want to say what comes, like, and not have not be afraid to say exactly what comes, because the pictures don't make, a lot of times the images don't make any sense to me. They're not meant to. They're only meant to make sense to the person I'm reading for. And then of course, you know, I've talked about how you'll get affirmations that, you know, you're right. That's really important to like improve your confidence so you can say all the crazy things that you're seeing and make it most accurate. Cause you know, sometimes like things have to be confirmed with ridiculous stories, and you don't know what ridiculous stories are going to confirm things, like, so you just say whatever is there. And then not emotionally attached to the outcome. You know, it's easier to read for a stranger, and you know, you can't be afraid of being wrong because that's an ego thing, and that's what like shuts off your psychicness. So all those things are things that I, you know, have literally been writing down to make a video series. I was literally working on this video series when this thing came up. So I don't know if my TV listens to me, and then it like brought, I don't know how it happened, but whatever, it happened. And then I was like, what is this? Like the remote viewers, like the government tells people to do the same thing in their psychic program. Like I didn't even know it existed. And then I'm like, oh, this is out on the CIA website, actually. Like this is released. How have I never heard of this before? And how is the CIA using the same tips that I use? It was very strange. And yeah, so I spent like 2 weeks of time I probably didn't have. Uh, reading all this paperwork. My eyes were bulging by the end of it. It was really interesting. I'll show you. So if you go to Google, you're just gonna want to like, literally, I just searched CIA government remote viewing. So you don't want to go to like anything that doesn't have .gov at it, because that's the official website of like, you know, our government. So, you know, it's not like, don't, there's like probably things that like teach you how to do things, but the whole instruction book for remote viewing is on the CIA website. My mind was just blown. So I'm going to show you like what the instruction book looks like. You'll go there. It's part of the Freedom for Information Act. You know, can request more things. There's not many things blocked out in this paperwork though. They show drawings, they show comparative drawings if you go through the website. And then there'll be this little like attachment that you can click on. It'll take you to the actual manual. And you'll see it's like all old school, like typewriter and stuff. And yeah, so you can go through all of the information, and it was like, it tells you, it shows you like how they set and how to do it and everything. There's a bunch of stuff like this. You can go through it. But I just found that super interesting. There's other places where yeah, let's go to the same thing again. So it shows the viewing sessions. It shows the timeline, like who is doing the viewing. What I brought up to you and highlighted for you is kind of when they finally were like summarizing the remote viewing sessions, and then like taking it to you know, like announce their findings to Congress. So I took some pictures of that and just highlighted what I thought was pertinent for you guys. And if you find it interesting, you can go down the big rabbit hole of of the CIA remote viewing information stuff. Okay. So it was super actually interesting. Just for me to be like, oh, it's the same thing. That's why I was like, I came to the conclusion that remote viewing and psychicness and all these different forms of things must be connecting to the same. Well, clearly we all have connection between us and everything. But I just found it interesting that the remote viewers were connecting and feeling the same way. So I'm going to go over this for you guys and just read the pertinent information. So this is what they submitted to like the senators and the congressmen and like the House as the like final paperwork of how the remote viewing went and something. I think they submitted this in the 90s. I don't know, a proof. It was released to the public apparently in 2003. Like I heard nothing about this going on ever at that time. But whatever. So first is talking about what kind of people. So apparently our government found pre-existing psychics or something somehow. And they specifically are talking about them looking for people with similar characteristics. So according to our government, psychic people have similar characteristics. Based on SRI observations, successful remote viewers tend to be confident, outgoing, adventurous, broadly successful individuals with some artistic bend. And then they go on to state that they got much of this information from commanders and supervisors. So I think that the psychics for the program were found and already like were in the military or some branch of government. They have other tests on there where they're just testing random psychics too. So like they test, it's got Uri Geller's paperwork. And I believe the lady that did the medium show, I watch her, so I don't know why. I can't remember her name. Anyway, they've got all their tests on psychics in there. So it talks about how they conducted interviews, and after the screening and interviews that they started to compile a group of psychics that they thought would be good doing this thing. They started training in 1978 through 79. And they kind of their questions that they wanted answered is essentially, could remote viewing be applied as like a spy collection method? Like, could they essentially like find out secrets from other countries using psychics, like to psychic stuff out? No one had attempted to train psychics before, so they were thinking about like they were going to leave the amount of training up to the people like in charge of the psychics, but they thought maybe like 18 to 24 month training cycle would be good. And I found like from your intention of when you want to like read psychically, like it doesn't take very long to like to like upload that. So like if you started reading this paperwork or like using the tips that I gave you as Saturn goes into Pisces, where you're crystallizing like psychic stuff, you'd be a psychic by the end of that transit in like 3 years. So just a side note on the astrology. It can literally happen that fast for people. It's not that hard. Like the biggest thing getting in front of you guys is like, your own confidence that you could do it. So I think that's all I had highlighted on this page. So next, yeah. So I zoomed in on this. They wanted to work to answer questions. So essentially they started up the program, but then they had like an emergency situation, and they had this missing aircraft. So before they even finished the training with the psychics in the program, this aircraft went missing. And so the first operational remote viewing session took place before the training was even done. And the remote viewer that they selected for the job was able to locate the aircraft out of no idea where to find it within 15 miles of where they eventually found it. Like the remote viewer found an aircraft that was down and missing. So that was kind of like the first confirmation that happened in 1979. And they didn't tell them like an area. They were just like, they actually showed them a picture of the plane, and was like, this plane is missing. Can you tell us where we can find this plane? And, they felt that it was in a certain area. And then they like, kind of, as you do, like just focused in more on it. So I found that really interesting because that's like the same thing. Okay. So then they're talking about back to the regular protocol of how they do the remote viewing, because of course they're explaining this to Congress. So they're talking about how typically a project begins with a request for information or a target, because they use words that are very like neutral for this program, so it doesn't give any idea of what they're actually looking for. So they did projects for like the Army, the Navy, the Secret Service, like I think the FBI had a couple projects for them. So they'd get projects from other parts of the government, and they'd ask the remote viewer for the job of, they'd call it a target. So they'd by then identify like certain remote viewers were good at like really fine details, and other people were good at like locations. So they could show a person that they were looking for, or the plane. And then eventually they just got to the point where they just stick either locate, they'd put like latitude and longitude in a manila envelope, and the trainer, because there was a trainer always with the remote viewer. So the remote viewer didn't have it like any contact with any information. So it made it like a clean slate. So it was easier for the remote viewer. They probably didn't think it was easier for the remote viewer. They probably thought didn't want any bias in it. But I know from my aspect, it is easier when you have no information, because then you're forced to just tell what you get. It actually makes you more accurate. So I found that interesting, that the government thought they were probably removing bias or, doing this for a part of the study, but it actually makes it easier for the psychic to do it that way, because then you're not biased. So you only have the information you're getting. So anyway, they go on to talk up here many times, even though the likelihood of obtaining the information is not high. So what they're saying is, even though they feel maybe their psychics wouldn't be able to like zone in on that certain department's project, that they still accepted the project in the CIA secret psychic group. And then what they did was construct a remote viewing collection plan. That meant like picking the psychic or remote viewer that they would have on these projects. Sometimes if it was of a high priority, that have more than one person on the project. And part of the collection plan that they drew up, because of course everything has to be on paperwork for the government, lists the essential elements of information that the intelligence agency was seeking in the project. Also listed are the target and the timeline for how soon they wanted this back. So, and it says the psychics were selected on the basis of their past performance and the types of indicators which were needed. So certain psychics are better at different things. And then it talks about once a remote viewer had been selected, they contacted him, they set up a schedule for him to come in and do the remote viewing. So yeah, there's two people involved in this. So essentially the interviewer, which was like the person that was like essentially the psychic's keeper, and then the psychic, which they call the remote viewer. They don't use psychic in our government. So the interviewer would control the session. So that'd be like if I were having a session with a person and the person was the one that knew what information they wanted out of me and they were asking questions. So that's like the interviewer in this case. Eventually, if, at first, when they started doing the projects, the interviewer would know what the different departments were looking for. But towards the end of the remote viewing program, not even the interviewer would know what the psychic was supposed to find. Like they'd put the picture of what they were looking for, the coordinates of it, in a manila envelope. So the interviewer nor the psychic would know, because they started to think, well, maybe they're just reading minds or something. And then they started to like literally have the person, the interviewer, or the person that knew what the psychic was supposed to find, like in a different country. And they'd have the sealed envelope that they didn't look at either. So it was like a double blind thing. So that's interesting as well. And I'm sure it didn't matter to the psychic, the remote viewer, getting the information. It doesn't matter like distance. Doesn't matter like if the person presenting it to you knows the answer, like none of that would matter. So the like success rate was still the same. So the goal of their sessions was to collect intelligence. To do this, great care, and I'm reading right from the page here, great care is taken to try and force the remote viewer to produce only information of intelligence value. This is done by denying him other sources of information about the target. We always keep the remote viewer blind. Most times the interviewer is also kept blind, so he will not inadvertently lead the remote viewer. And like I said before, it's actually easier to get the messages when you don't know anything about it. So I bet they didn't suspect that maybe. Okay. And then they're actually going through the conducting of one of the remote viewing sessions. Now they said that like the sessions with the remote viewer was like a half hour to an hour long or something. But this is interesting to me. So first they'd come into the room, they talk about how there'd be some small talk just to, it says, to promote enthusiasm on part of the remote viewer. I guess so that'd be like when if you're a psychic or a reader, you meet with somebody and you're like, oh, hi, you know, have blah, blah, blah. And then during the remote viewing session, the lights are dimmed, reducing, it says, after images on the retina of the eye, and producing a quiet, stable environment. And I'm like, oh, so they're putting their psychics in relaxing environments to remote view. That's perfect. See why I was so interested in this? It's like the same thing that other people have learned to do naturally. And I'm like, the government has a program for this. And why isn't everyone a psychic? Like the government's telling you how to be a psychic, y'all. And then the remote viewer hadn't seen the information before. Just talks about, you know, blind sessions. Okay, so they're specifically in this paperwork describing to Congress a specific session. And I know there's a bunch of sessions that they describe to Congress. So the remote viewer is asked to focus his attention, physically relax, and concentrate on the target, which has been designated. So if you were a psychic, you would just be like sitting, getting into the energies at that point. After the session, which usually lasts about 30 minutes, the remote viewer is asked to draw their perceptions that they had during a session. This is very important. The drawings may be more accurate or show a different perspective than the verbal descriptions about the target. After the drawing is done and the remote viewer talks about them, the remote viewing session is completed. The tape is then transcribed and a transcript furnished to the project requester. After the project is completed, the requester provides an evaluation. As in any other task, feedback is essential. So essentially, after they seal all the information that they got from the remote viewer, the drawing, the verbal description, and sends it off to every other department, whoever requested it, the place that is getting it conducts their information, and then has to send feedback to the remote viewing program because, of course, confirmation is important, especially if they want their remote viewers, psychics, to feel more confident about their work. So yeah, that's all the remote viewing program for the government. Like that was the only thing that the remote viewers requested from the departments was the feedback that had to come back in. Because if you think about it, like there's no costs in this for our government. Like you just go and find, like, I guess they used recliners or whatever, and like a room that could be darkened. Like there was no technical anything. Yeah. So, and then it talks about how in this report, summarizing it to Congress, 2 projects were conducted for the Army. 2 were in combination with like ACSINCSCOM, and another was the first missing Navy ACE. And then they present their project book, like the whole, all of the remote viewing that they did for Congress. Then at the bottom of this page, they're going to review essentially with our congressmen, like the efficiency of the project. So they go over like how this way of collecting intelligence like didn't risk anything. Like you couldn't be, like it seemed to them that the people where they were remote viewing, they couldn't detect that they were getting remote viewed, except Chinese scientists claim to have detected remote viewing during one of the Chinese remote viewing experiments with children. And I read in other places of the paperwork that there was a place in the Soviet Union that they were looking at because they were trying to see during the Cold War if there were nukes there, which there were. They found the nukes, but I guess that someone had reported they got intelligence eventually on the Soviet side that like lights or something were seen in the area, which drew attention. So apparently when you remote view somewhere, it might, of course, affect the particular waves there, or because you're concentrating on it, it might have a photo, some kind of photo effect, which is cool, I thought too. Let me see if I have anything else from this paperwork. Yeah, and also there's no known defense against remote viewing, meaning that there was no kind of like they can't put up walls. They were able to view underground. They were able to view actually in space and then later confirm what they were remote viewing. So it seemed to be like a really good project for our government. And this is what they said that they were able to collect. They were able to get penetration of inaccessible targets like in the Soviet Union, underground targets, science and technology information, because the viewers were able to, like, some of them are really good at like actually zooming into things and like reading actual paperwork and like writing that down. Queuing of other intelligence collection systems, I don't know what that means, and imminent hostilities, meaning they were able to like scan and see if there was any like intentions going on against our government or whatever. Yeah, so kind of see what was going on in the other intelligence agencies. So they have a couple things blacked out here. A couple things are kept from us. From what I understand, I'll just get through this paper first. I think it's the last one. so they were talking about increasing the reliability, like essentially like making everybody streamline at the best thing, but I don't really think that's not going to work out for them because everybody's good at something different, it seems like, for skills. And they were looking for like a way to recruit psychics essentially, and using the staff psychologists, um, and increase the accuracy of the addition of the screening methods. Okay, so they were looking, they were wanting at the what I have circled here is they're wanting to evaluate their current training program, um, since they will decrease the tendencies of a remote viewer to analyze rather than just report, increase the quality and reliability of the remote viewing, and provide some predictive value about the remote viewing product. So in the original training program, I think they had looser guidelines when it pertained to how they were presented, like with the coordinates. I think this report came, this part of the report is a huge report. I'm not going to go over it all. This was the original part of the remote viewing program. And I think they did still have, like I said, they showed them a picture of a plane, and then they had coordinates in an envelope. So eventually through the program, like I said, they like nobody would know about what they were looking for. And then they ended up like viewing on like potential threats to the US, and changing their training program to like hone in on different areas. And then this is important. Remote viewing has demonstrated it is of value and has a high rate of success. Remote viewing should never stand alone, but should be used in conjunction with information from other intelligence sources. And then, it talks about we do not evaluate our product. All evaluations are done by professional intelligent analysts, meaning that like they're not the ones that bring the project up. The projects come in from different headquarters, different parts of the government, because the remote viewing program was just like, hey, the US has these psychics, any department can use them. Like, so that was just kind of cool. And then it says this concludes the briefings. Are there any questions? And it also talks about remote viewing is not passive. It's inexpensive. There is no defense and there is no risk of collection compromise, thus making it a superior tool for spying on other countries, which I just thought was interesting. If you want to read about this particular program was called the Grill Flame program. There's a bunch of different names for the different groups of remote viewing and the different psychic groups. I know at some point it went down like a dark path, like because they did try to, from what I understand after researching what they do have on the CIA website, some of the people that participated in the program that are named in the program talked about getting out of it because the government was looking to like mind control and stuff. And yeah, from what I know of people that are engaged in this kind of thing, they're very open and kind people. I don't know if you'd be able to do it if you weren't. So they were like, we're out or whatever. So maybe I still think clearly if it works this well, like our government clearly still is using something like this. I just thought it was interesting that like, it makes me wonder if the government had a psychic say, hey, this is how you do it. Or if, yeah, it makes me interested in how this was all developed. There's so many pages. I haven't been down the big rabbit hole of the CIA. But I did spend like 2 weeks, like in shock and awe, like, holy smokes, this actually exists. And the only reason I wouldn't believe anything that was actually put out on CIA.gov, because who knows what is like released to actually like, I don't know, distract the public. but I'm forced to believe this because they're doing the same thing that I do and I can connect. And I'm like, holy smokes, like what else is true? Clearly people know aliens are a thing. We don't need the government to say that. But I guess I really had no opinion on what this remote viewing thing was before. So of course, after all this, I was like, oh, I wonder if I can remote view. So I was like, how would I think of something that I wouldn't know what was going on? That I wouldn't know any information about. I was like, that's a problem because no one's actually asking me about a location. Um, and then I was like, it was like the week that the lottery was super big in the US. I don't know, it was like insane amounts of money. And I was like, oh, I should remote view the lottery office because I literally had no, like the headquarters, because I literally had no idea where that was. Because I was like, if I can remote view the lottery office, then maybe I could remote view like the Powerballs. Like it seemed like, ooh. So yeah. So so I tried it. They spent a lot of time. I think it said like half hour to an hour on their sessions. Um, I spent like, I don't know, it was like maybe 3 minutes because I was like, wasn't really confident that I'd be able to do the same thing because I'd never done it before. Although in some readings, I was able to see someone's couch. And I wasn't sure if it was a couch from like when their mom was alive or if it was their current couch. You know, I don't really ask any questions. I just describe what I see. And I was like, well, maybe that's remote viewing, or I didn't really. So I tried it and let me see. I will show you. Um, I'll show you the picture that I came up with. And I'll show you, I'll make note of what is. Now, I'm not an artist. But essentially I'll show you what I came up with. So I thought like there was for some reason a boxy building. Um, yeah, I spent like, I don't know, like 3 minutes on this. So I was like, I'm just gonna do this. There's a boxy building, and I felt like it was a flat box. I didn't know really what this was here, but I felt like there was some kind of rectangle there. And I thought maybe there was windows or doors or something here. Right away, the first thing that I actually got was the rectangle, and then like there was a sidewalk that like came down in a V, because that's just kind of what I saw. I thought it was a light building. I thought maybe there was like a bench or something here. It definitely wasn't like plants there. There was just something here. And then I kind of cut it off in the photo, but there was a little thing up here, like a little logo or something. And the words that came to my head about that logo was something native. So it was specifically the words native. So instantly I thought like maybe a Native American or something. Oh, and before I did this, like I was like, what state is it in? And when it said Florida, I was like, oh, well, I had to scan my mind. I was like, my aunts live in Florida. Did I know that the headquarters was in Florida? And then I was convinced, like, no. I drew a picture of Florida, and like I felt I got a picture of the state too. I wish I would have brought that up for this video. So I felt it was up in like somewhere at the top, like left of the state. Now there was a second when I thought it might be at the right, but then I was my mind was like, no, it's at the left. So I was like, okay. And I was like, seriously thought I was gonna be like, I don't know, foolish or something, but it felt the same as when I do things. So I was like, I'm just gonna go with it. Like, who even cares? So the door and the door thing, this rectangular thing here, there was the native logo or something. And because it was Florida, I just assumed when native came to mind, like it would be like a Seminole Indian, because like that I do know about Florida and like, you know, their First Nation people there. But then there was something there, like right here. I was like, it must be a bench or something like man-made. I knew it wasn't a plant there. So then I will take you to the picture. I think I've got the picture here too. Yeah, so this is the picture. And the stairs aren't like that, but they are like going like that. I was actually shocked at how close it was, considering I spent like 3 minutes on it and I'd never done it. I was pretty sure about that rectangular thing. I got that in the picture. And the native thing wasn't a native like Seminole. It was like, the Florida like flamingo. Yeah. And this, I had kind of felt like it was a bench when I drew the picture. I probably could have spent more time on it, like asking more questions, but I didn't because I was just like, let's see if I can do this stuff. It was like, I actually didn't really have confidence that I could, but considering it was like 3 minutes, it was the first time I did it. I mean, it's the shape and everything. I think seriously, anybody can do this. You guys should totally go and take the tips that I use and like, just like remote view something. Like it's going to be amazing for you, I think. Yeah. So that's my story of when I randomly a month ago figured out that remote viewers were actual just normal psychics because they get the feeling of normal psychics. And my big rabbit hole down the remote viewing thing. And then me realizing I probably don't have any like emotional like I think that you need to really care about something in order to like use it in that way. And although it'd be nice to win the lottery, I don't know if like I'm emotionally attached to winning money as much as I'm emotionally attached to like helping people connect with their people. Like I kind of wish I was more emotionally attached to money because that'd be awesome. Maybe when my kids are out of the house, like I'll concentrate on like, how would you even do that? Like you'd have to like essentially go in the office, like locate the machine, I guess. And then like be like, okay, I'm viewing on whatever the next lottery day was, and then like see the balls come out. I mean, it's doable. I should try and do it. Like if next time I have a really bougie light system and everything, then you guys will know. But you should totally try remote viewing. There's something about the training booklet available on that website though. Okay, so I mentioned how they call things a target, and I understand that because that would actually make it easier to view. But I think that they make it very technical. There's something about that booklet that makes it very technical. Like they tell the person to write something down and then disregard the first thing that they write down. But if a person knows the field that they get into when they're ready for the session, they wouldn't have to disregard the first thing. I don't think. And they make a lot of dependence upon the interviewer. And you don't need that. I've literally done readings for people where I'm not getting back and forth for them. I'm just speaking to a phone. It makes it almost seem like they don't want the people like they trained people that weren't really psychic before. After that, like as the program progressed, and it almost seems like from the training manual that they make it very cold. Like they make it so that like almost the person that they're training is made to feel like they need that interaction with the interviewer and able to do that. So it almost makes it seem like they only wanted these people to be psychic in this one aspect. When if they, because they don't mention feelings either. They don't mention the feeling that you need to get into when you're in that space. But the people that remote viewed, them talking about it after this paperwork got released, do mention the feeling, like the grateful feeling that you get into, which kind of clears everything else out. And so, yeah, that's That's my overall nerdery on the remote viewing program for the CIA, which everyone can go and look up. Now, I should mention that I only remembered this because I was on the phone with my son last night and his partner. And his partner brought up aliens and he was like, I don't know how I feel about those. And I was like, what? It's 2023. Everybody knows that aliens exist. Like, the paperwork was released that they had like a ship. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it was released like on my dad's funeral day. That's why I remember it. And he's like, yeah, why isn't anyone still talking about that? I'm like, I don't know, like, because everyone knew there was aliens already. And then I mentioned the remote viewing program and how I was weirded out that that got released. And it's like I saw his mind explode, or their mind explode. Their mind exploded. They're like, and then they were like, well, can't you just get a website that says .gov? I'm like, no, you can't just get a website that says .gov. Like, that has to be a government agency. I'm like, yeah, I was shocked too. Like, our government actually had psychics. It's not just a conspiracy. Like, because I know the feeling, so I know what they were. I know they were doing it. It's not just like. So yeah, that's how that came up. So, love to my son and his partner. They're both amazing, and yeah, that's why you get this wormhole of a video. All right, I am gonna get back to my real life and get off of here. I love you guys, and thanks for nerding out with me about the CIA stuff. But totally go read the paperwork. Go read the manual. But essentially, like, add my hacks that I put in. And so essentially the government tells you how to be a psychic. So that's amazing. Thanks, USA. All right. I love you guys. Bye.